Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Behind Frenemy Lines, where we get on an opposition supporter to chat about the upcoming game for this week, just to get a bit better perspective on all things football. Because, we like to think we know a little bit about what we're talking about, but it's not always the case when it comes to the opposition. So tonight, we're lucky enough to be joined by Keegan from Turn Over the Tape, a Gold Coast-based podcast. Keegan, how are you, mate? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Chris. Great. I'm excited to be here.
No, my pleasure. First of all, how did you get into supporting the Gold Coast? And secondly, how did the podcast come about? And tell us a bit about it.
Oh, yeah. So first question, how did I get supporting Gold Coast? I was living on the Gold Coast when the Gold Coast was born into existence, really. Before that, I was actually a West Coast supporter from when I was a little kid.
Oh,
I started supporting West AFL in 94. Lived in Tasmania, so there was no local teams to go for. And they won the premiership in 94, and I was an impressionable 6-year-old. So I jumped on them straight away and followed them up pretty much until the Gold Coast came in I think it was 2011 now. So a long time ago now. And how the podcast got started, actually just with a group of friends. So Matt, who I do the podcast with, who's a co-host who unfortunately couldn't be here. He is a friend of mine from high school. And so we sort of have this group of friends that sort of really get into sport. He comes from a rugby league background and sort of converted over to AFL, while following both sports when the Suns came into existence. So he's one of those rare people that you think that putting a team in a spot gets locals to get behind it, even if they're not AFL supporters. So that's how it sort of got started for us.
That's so good. And you mentioned being from Tassie. What are your thoughts now with the almost Tassie side almost entering the competition? How does that make you feel?
It's probably long overdue for sure.
I agree.
It definitely needed to happen. It probably needed to happen 20 years ago, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I'm glad it's sort of getting done, and I hope they sort of get, because you hear all this news coming out, like the stadium's a bit an issue and everything else is going on. But yeah, just hope it comes into fruition sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. Very much long overdue. Well, big game coming up this weekend. I'm honestly scared about this game, from being truthful. Richmond sitting 16th on the ladder, coming off a 61-point loss against Freo. It's remarkable we're still not last yet. And Gold Coast sitting second, undefeated, after a very nice 52-point win against the Kangaroos, which we were getting a little bit nervous about as a Richmond supporter, because we hold their draft pick and you let them back in. We're like, no, yeah, you've got to get the job done. But it sort of, if you look at the scoreline, it kind of looks like it was a workmanlike performance, and you sort of had to do what you had to do.
Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting one where I think we spoke about this when we did our podcast on Monday. I sat there and was like, halfway through the third quarter, they got up by 8 points, but I never felt like that we're in real trouble or we're really out of reach. And then lo and behold, Raul and Anderson and Miller put the foot down in the middle and sort of put a few goals on them at the end of the third quarter. And then from there, I think we kicked something like 8 goals in the last quarter and really put a lead out, and sort of, kept our percentage above 150, which is, as a Gold Coast supporter this late into the season, is probably a rare thing to see.
Yeah, it was, those midfielders, to have the ability to actually just flick a switch and just go, is scary. It's good to see when it's in full flight. Scary when you're playing against it.
Yeah, it's been something that's been there's been so much promise for so long. Like, we've had Raul and Anderson for, oh God, my maths is awful, 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And it's sort of been a promise of like, oh, this is this midfield that's going to just burst open one day. And then this year it seems to have all clicked. 12 months under Damien Hardwick's sort of structure and how he wants to structure the team up. And then also having the likes of the issue we always had was it was always Miller, Anderson and Raul, and that was it when Jew was coaching. But now we've developed sort of a second line where it's Humphrey comes in there now. You've got Will Graham can go in there, Weller can go in there. So there's a bit more depth in there than we probably have had in previous years.
It's definitely gotten a lot deeper. I remember when Matt Rao burst onto the scene, he was really unlucky with that injury. I think his trajectory could have happened a lot quicker had that not happened. But he seems to be ripping it up at the moment. I think he had a crazy number of clearances last week, and he's just dominating on the inside.
Yeah, he's a funny one, because if you looked at him last year and look at him this year, just like on body shape, and I'm not one to sort of look too closely at that sort of stuff, but you can see he's slimmed down a little bit. He's got a bit of acceleration out of the stoppage that he never used to have. Like last year, he was just an absolute meat axe. He used to just belt people into submission. I remember round one, well, opening round last year against Richmond, he had like something ridiculous, like 10, 15 clearances. It was a massive number. And he was such an inside beast. But now he sort of works around the outside a bit more, getting a bit more easy ball and probably doing his career a service by not having to belt against other players for the rest of the whole season.
And what's it like? What's the vibe like at the moment, sitting second, undefeated? I suppose it feels like from the outside looking in, this has been in the makings for a little while. How does it feel? Yeah, from your perspective, watching this evolve.
It's funny, like it feels like it doesn't feel real. And that's probably because of 13 years of real sort of like promise and then drop. And then we started low in 2011. We got when Ablett was sort of at his peak and we were looking at finals, and then he did his shoulder against Collingwood, and then we bottomed out. Then Eid came in and we sort of middled around a bit. Then Dew came. It sort of feels like it's been long overdue. Like this, we should have been in this position years and years ago. And it seems like now stuff has been sorted out, whether it's behind the scenes in the coaching group, but it finally seems to have all been put together, and it's nice to see. And it's exciting as a club that we haven't seen any sort of real tangible success or any sort of promise. And having been 4-0 this point in the years, it's a good feeling for someone that's for a supporting base that I can tell you from other supporters I spoke to, is good. It's just a good feeling, really.
Yeah, and like we were talking about off air, like even though I suppose some of the games you've had at the start have been the easy teams, bar Adelaide, which was a cracking game. At the end of the day, you're winning the games you need to win, and that you can only play the teams in front of you, and you're doing what you need to do to get yourself ahead of the ledger. Before you start playing everyone else, which is good. Yeah,
it's good. Like it sounds really silly, but they're the team. They're like good teams win those games regardless of when they come. And if we want to be a good team, and I'm not saying we're a good team yet. We've still got stuff we need to prove for sure. But if we want to be a good team, we want to get to where the club wants us to get to. We've got to win those games. And I can tell you right now, looking at the fixture ahead, after like starting next week, the games get a lot more difficult, and then that run will really tell where we sit, whether we are a top 4 team, which personally I don't think we are, whether we're a top 4 team, whether we're a 6 to 7 team, or whether we're like fighting like 8th, 9th or 10th. So we'll find out probably by the bye where we sort of really do sit.
And what was your expectation levels heading into 2025? Second year under Dimmer, like you said, what were you expecting to see?
So we had this. We sort of do. Me and Matt on our podcast do a bit of a prediction at the start of the season when the fixture comes out. So sort of end of last year, and we sort of got ourselves when we go through this fixture like game by game, going win that, lose that. I think we had ourselves around 13 wins. So that was probably like borderline 8th, 9th, 10th. So we were expecting at this point, like with the amount of sort of like the amount of draft picks we've had come into the team, the academy's sort of really taking off a bit. We should be playing finals, and that was the expectation. And I'm glad the club has come out even last year and said finals is an expectation. Like I don't think we ever had a coach that was like, that's the expectation, that's the minimum is making finals. And sort of hearing that's really refreshing. And yeah, that's the expectation this year is make finals. If we don't make finals again, then yeah, it's another failure of a season, which is good. You want to have those expectations. You want to work towards something.
If you weren't to make it, at what point does Heat start going back onto Dimmer, do you reckon? Because it's a big call to call finals. Like we've obviously say it for us as well. It's bold, and you want to hear it as a supporter, but if it doesn't execute, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's interesting for sure. If we didn't make finals this year, I think that he's probably got enough good grace and he's built up enough good grace within a passionate yet small supporter base, which goes without saying. I think he probably gets another year after this if we were to not make finals. But the issue is if we start treading water again, and this is probably comes from being in a football club, sort of in a bit of an outpost of AFL up on the Gold Coast, whereas we don't sort of see success, we don't see tangible rise, then players that are on the list that are currently there may start looking elsewhere for that success. And that is why it's so important to sort of keep banking these wins, moving up the ladder to keep the likes. And you probably have heard Matt Rowell is currently out of contract. That's something that is getting pushed around a lot. So to keep players like that, we need a win and we need to play finals. These guys are winners. They want to win. And that's why it's so important for Hardwick to keep us winning. So yeah, if we don't make finals this year, then I reckon he definitely gets another year. And then at the end of 2026, that's probably when we sit back and assess and go, where are we at if it was not to happen?
And as Tiger Mars just pointed out, Dan Rioli, how's he settled in at Gold Coast Life? He's probably the one that hurts the most leaving, I reckon, just from an impact on the game perspective, and then seeing what he's done for you so far. It always made complete sense why he would bolster your side and take you to another level.
Oh, having capable halfbacks was something that we didn't have last year. I think is such an important part of Hardwick's sort of game plan, was having good bounce off the halfback line, as you're probably aware when he was coaching you guys. And last year we were having the likes of Alex Sexton, God bless his soul, great player up forward, but he's not a rebounding defender, and we were throwing players through there constantly trying to find that balance. We never really found that balance, and it ended up probably costing us a couple of close wins and probably ended up costing us finals off the back of that. But this year with Rioli and Noble as well, both coming in off the half-back line, he's been really, really good. But sort of to talk about Rioli specifically, I've just been really impressed with just his pace and sort of his positioning. Like, he was so important in that Adelaide game at times when the tide was coming against us, because that was a really swingy game where we would kick 3 goals and then Adelaide would kick 3 goals. And when Adelaide are on a run, I think it was in the third quarter, he charged through a couple of sort of clearances, got the hands and just got us driving forward. And probably one thing I maybe didn't anticipate was how tough he is as well. Like, I didn't anticipate he's laid a few very heavy tackles and been a bit more physical than I thought he was going to be. Like, admittedly, didn't follow a lot of Richmond games, so him coming in and doing that as well is he's definitely repaying the faith of that pick 6 that we gave up, which was an interesting point of contention late last year. But I think that it's been worth it if it gets us to where we want to go.
I think it will be worth it as well. Yeah, he's a gun player. Like I said, halfbacks are kind of the cornerstone for a lot of teams now. It's almost the most important position. And as well as Flanders was doing last year, I think I found watching some of your games last year that he had more impact when he was front of center. And then getting Rioli, and you can do whatever you want now. You can play him forward, you can play him back. So you get a bit more variation, which is good. Not good for us because we're going to cut the brunt of that this weekend. But we'll have a look at the team lineups. Some interesting changes, probably more so from our perspective than yours. We've got just the one change for you guys.
Yeah, so Cloese out for or Closey. I keep messing it up. It goes one way or the other, but Closey's out for Butterick. Probably a like for like. Butterick went out the previous week against Adelaide with some sore ribs. He's come back. Closey had a really good year last year. He was a rookie pickup, and he's sort of been a bit not awful this season, but it's good that we've got this depth now. If we're dropping players like Closey on form base, that's a good sign. Like, it means that there's depth there, and that players have to earn their spot now. Like previously, it's basically been if you're in the starting 23, you're very hard to dislodge. So having that sort of rotation in and having that sort of depth is really, really handy.
Yeah, I think if you've got competition for spots,
that's
always a positive. And Ben King's 100th game. Geez, it's all coming up against us. Anything else you want to throw at us this week?
No, look, I think Ben King's is an interesting guy. Like we talk about on our podcast, he's very much a throwback to the old 90s full forward. Like, he'll get his 6 touches and kick 5 goals. He doesn't he leads and he marks and he turns around and kicks a goal. He's very much a throwback. Like, you won't see him get too many in any handball chains, or you won't see him give off too many. So he's very much a throwback, but I love that about him. I think he's a really underrated full forward. I think that he's currently ahead in the Coleman. So hopefully for our sake anyway, that he keeps on keeping on, because he does a lot of good work that, kicking goals. He had that rough patch last year where he couldn't kick a goal. He couldn't kick a behind. He'd go out on the full every single time, but he sort of seems to have righted it this year. So yeah, very happy to see him play 100 games, and hopefully we see at least 100 more, maybe more from him.
and he's always been a dangerous matchup for us. But the one man coming in that might actually help us in that department, funnily enough, is Noah Bolter, who's
Yes.
in along with Samson Ryan and Sam Lawler, which would be very, very nice to have him back.
I haven't heard about Noah Bolter coming in this week at all. That's not something I'm
low
being
key. It
aware
just
of.
slipped under the radar very quietly. So with Sammy Lawler back into it, it's weird. Like being a first year player, in a lot of ways, I feel a little bit scared that we're so, I don't want to say reliant, but craving his foot skills in the team. But it's just how accurate of a kick he is compared to our other players. Jacob Bauer, Tyler Sonsie, and Jacob Blight to miss out. I think Richmond supporters would probably agree that Bauer and Sonsie were probably on the chopping block. Bauer was sub 2 weeks in a row, so we tend to either he's going to play a full game in AFL or VFL, so VFL it is. The interesting out for our perspective is Jacob Blight, who has kind of changed his game to a bit more of a ruckman / forward, can play defence as well. And I had to actually edit some of the slides I got because I actually had Blight playing on King. On the back of Miller getting beaten by Tracy last week from Fremantle, I just felt like the Blight might have been the better matchup physically and with speed and closing speed and things like that. But now he's out, I feel like that's Noah Bolter might just get thrust into it straight onto King. And they've had some battles before.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. The interesting thing, and I'd like your sort of maybe opinion on this, is we've got the 3 tall forwards. So we've got King, Walter, and Ethan Reid. So if Bolter goes to King, where would you see the Walter and Reid sort of matchups go?
So Miller will have to take one by default, and then Nathan Broad is probably the other one who plays tall. But that's where we can kind of come undone. If our team defense isn't working, or if we're allowing easy ball movement from the opposition midfielders, it won't really matter because the players will just get off a leash. So, yeah, Miller had a bit of a stinker last week, so we're kind of needing him to bounce back to course correct a little bit there. Prior to that, he was doing fairly well, to be honest. But it will be interesting to see just what the balance and the cohesion looks like with Bolter back in, who obviously hasn't played for the first 6 games or the practice games. So, it will be interesting to see. And even just without going into the details of his life story, but just even his mental state heading into the game too. Like obviously the court thing's in a couple of days after the game. So we don't know, if it's going to impact him playing or what it is, but he's back.
Yeah, you suppose you don't know until you put him out there and you see how it goes. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. Like, I look at your team on paper just as like a observer from far away. I sort of look at the Richmond team on paper, and it doesn't look that there are players there I recognise, like Vlosten and Broad are solid defenders. Bolter's a solid defender as well. And then I look at the forward line, old Tommy Lynch is still going around. We remember him from back in the day as well. And like Hopper and Taranto and then Curvis, they're all good players. So yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think your team on paper looks really good, but obviously, like, you've had some struggles this year. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, I'm always nervous going to a Gold Coast game, and I look at that team on paper, and it gives me pause for thought. Like, obviously, like, I want to be confident. I want to see my team win, but it gives me pause for thought that maybe it's not. It's because in the Fremantle game, I think it was you stuck with Freo for a half, and then it sort of fell away a little bit in the second half, and it could be something similar, or you could stick with it for 3/4 or even the whole game.
It feels like that's been the trend for us, is sticking with a team for a half. The first couple of games we were kind of poor at the start, then finished strong, and then the recent pattern's been starting strong and finishing poorly. And I think it just comes down to an experience thing. We've got, even though you've got like your Broads and Vlostons and whatnot out there, there's still a hell of a lot of inexperience in amongst that as well. But it's good experience, good exposure, and it's just where we're at in the football cycle. So, look, I expect him to stick with you guys for a half or so, but I think over the course of 4 quarters, we're just not there yet. But having said that, this is probably the strongest team we've put out this year. Just with the simple addition of Bolter just adds a bit more security down back. Lynch had a bit of an off game last week, but it's going to be interesting to see how we go.
Him and Sam Collins might renew hostilities.
Yes.
Usually they have a bit of fun playing on each other. So we'll wait and see on that. Yeah,
they both got a bit angry the other time, didn't they?
Yeah. Sammy Collins is our spiritual leader, really. Like you've got Anderson's definitely the captain, but Collins is sort of you get around him. He puts out a big spoiler, so he gets really into it. So we do love Sammy Collins down back. He's definitely the heart of the back line for sure.
that's why they clash, because Lynch is in a lot of ways our spiritual leader or a father figure for a lot of these kids.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that they're probably actually good mates off the field.
Oh yeah.
Every chance. But
as soon as you walk off the ground, you shake hands and
100%.
you go have a beer or something like that. So yeah.
Exactly right. We'll take a look at some of the matchups that we've got quickly as well. A big battle I always like to see is the two big ruckmen, Nankervis against Witts. I've often thought that Witts has been severely underrated in the competition for a while. He is a beast around the ground in all facets, and I just feel like he's a little bit unassuming when you talk about other ruckmen in the competition. But this will be an interesting battle. I feel like if you're talking about pound for pound, I think Witts might get the edge on Nank from a height and tap perspective. Our biggest hope is that Nank fights his ass off like usual and gets a few back around the ground.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Witts. I love Jared Witts. I think he's been an amazing pickup for what we paid for from Collingwood, which wasn't much. And he's come in and he's done an amazing job. His height and his size just around the contest, around the clearance, he's so important to us. And he's keeping out a very good ruckman in Ned Moyle as well, who's playing in the VFL, who could easily be an AFL level ruckman. But Witts is just so good that he does keep him out. But yeah, that will be where if Nankervis is going to get him, it will be around the ground. The one thing that Witts has probably been doing a lot this year is he's been drawing a lot of free kicks. And people will be out there, we're on top of like the free kick ladder, which we get a lot of free kicks. A lot of them are coming from the opposing ruckman holding on to Witts. They seem to have really cracked down on that. Like Cherry last week gave away like 4 or 5 free kicks by literally just holding on to Witts and holding him down. So you've got to find a way to combat that. But if you can combat that, he's definitely gettable around the ground for sure.
Just on the free kick thing, this isn't a loaded question.
No, go ahead.
From the limited games you might have watched of Richmond when Dimmer was coaching, do you think that he is coaching Gold Coast the same type of way that he coached us?
So I know where this comes from, because I know famously Richmond didn't get a lot of free kicks when Hardwick was coach. I'm assuming is this where we're
it was quite substantially in the negative deficit areas for a lot of years.
Without sort of watching Richmond too closely back at the big games I definitely watched, but sort of not watching them week to week. I don't know. I honestly don't know what it's like. What I can tell you from like watching Gold Coast, there's probably in a few games, the Adelaide game stands out like a sore thumb, and we've probably got a bit of a nice run of it. That's not to say that we haven't deserved any of our free kicks. I think what has helped this year, and I think what has helped, because feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm going on the wrong tangent, but the one thing I do notice the Gold Coast team compared to the Richmond team was this Gold Coast team has maybe more of a sort of, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Like a sort of not a hike, but like a more stronger midfield. Am I out of line saying that compared to the old Richmond team, and getting like Rao, for instance, getting his hands on the ball first, gets a free kick, that sort of stuff? Do you think I'm off base there?
I mean, if we compare, I suppose, the midfields, if you got Rao, Anderson, Miller, v Dusty, Koch,
Graham,
like they're probably in about the same way. For us, it's actually never about the ones that we give away. Like they're often always there, as they are for most teams. It's the ones that aren't paid that were like, what is going on? But anyway, that's not a... I just thought it was interesting, because one of the arguments was always about it's how we were coached. It's like, okay, well, now the guys coaching another club and they're doing pretty well from a success perspective. Are they being coached the same, different? Like what's... it's just interesting.
And it definitely, it's interesting to sort of see how it flows. Yeah, again, didn't follow Richmond too closely, so outside of watching your grand finals, which you will be very happy about, I didn't watch them too closely, so I couldn't honestly tell you. Wish I could.
And to be fair, this year we're doing a little bit better with the ledger as well. I think they feel sorry for us now because we're playing so good. The next matchup, this is going to be really crucial, to be honest, and Noah Anderson has torn our hearts out a couple of times. He's an absolute weapon. And McIntosh has been our go-to. Oh, I know. My two boys love to watch the YouTube videos, and there's ones of like AFL goals after the siren, and it kills me every time, because there's that one. There's David Mundy
Yeah.
I'm like, just stop it. And then they'll throw in Carmichael Hunt for good
So
measure at some
I
stage.
was going to say, in an old workplace, my old boss was a Richmond supporter, and every now and then I used to just flick him the YouTube video of the Carmichael Hunt goal after the siren, which was always good just to really sort of get under his skin. But yeah, I can understand that for sure.
But yeah, so Noah Anderson's been another one of those players who's running hot for most of his career. He's a very, very good player. And Camden McIntosh for us this year has done quite a few tagging jobs, although in the middle couple of weeks, he didn't really seem to have a job. But last week, he seemed to get back on the job by tagging Caleb Sarong, really get under his skin. I suppose the question for us is, is it Anderson, is it Miller, or is it Rowell? It's probably not Rowell, because I think it's really hard to tag players like Rowell who are like on the ground at the ball getting it out. It's kind of no point. But the outside run of opposition teams are what's hurting us dramatically. If we don't win the clearance, we're pretty much cooked. So I feel like that K-Mac might get the job on Anderson, but then if Miller starts getting off the leash, I think he might find himself bouncing between a couple, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can tag Rowell. I think he's too he'll lose people in the contest and going through the clearance for sure. I think if you had those three, or even if you wanted to throw Flanders in there as a number 4 as well, you probably pick Anderson. I think that he has the outside game that, you can sort of shut that down a little bit. He does have a bit of inside, but his outside burst and his outside burst away from the contest is probably what makes him a special player. And if you can shut that down, then I think you're definitely well on the way to sort of breaking even in that midfield.
And he gets so dangerous when forward of centre, like with his goal kicking ability from long range as well. Like you can't just switch off for half a second, because he'll be there getting a loop around handball and bang, goal.
Yeah, he didn't kick one last week, but he does get a fair few goals for a midfielder. Like the one I watched us play in Melbourne at the G in round 2 or whatever, and he kicked one from 55 metres out on the run, almost like across his body, and it just sailed through. And that's the sort of weapon that he has when he's within 50. He's good chance of snagging a goal. So yeah, if you're going to tag one, I definitely would be Anderson.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's where he'll start, but then we'll see how it plays out. We've spoken about this one a little bit, but Noah Bolter on King, I'm sure they'll be reacquainted at some point. It'll be a good matchup.
Yeah.
What will be interesting is how underdone Bolter might be. He obviously played the VFL game last week. It was, granted, it was just against the Academy under-18s, but it was footy minutes nonetheless.
Yeah.
And look, for all the conditioning and training and stuff that you can do, nothing really quite beats match fitness. So for me, there's still a little bit of a question mark on that side of things, but I still think it was the right call to pick him this week after playing the VFL last week. But like you said, King's in good form. And I think these two big boys are going to go head-to-head for hopefully bulk of the game. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. Like King's been an interesting one because, and I think I didn't mention this earlier, but for the while he's kicked a lot of his goals in a really poor team, like in a team that can't really hit him, kicking ball over his head, kicking the ball at his knees, kicking the ball at his ankles. Now he's got a team actually delivering it relatively well to his chest. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks this week. The key to sort of shutting down King may not be Bolter, it may be how much pressure your midfield can place onto
100%.
Rowell Anderson. If you can put the pressure on and then he's not getting lace out, because the thing with King is he's so tall and when he jumps, he's so high, like he either marks it or he gets a free kick for chopping the arm. So if you can stifle that delivery to him, then that goes a long way to shutting him down, because as I mentioned, he's not great below his knees. He's not going to sort of burn you on the turn and kick a snap from 30 metres out. He's very much a straight line player. So if you want to shut him down, that's probably the best way to do it.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's kind of been the pattern. In the first half of games, we've gone toe-to-toe with midfields and broken even in a lot of the main stats and gotten our fair share of goals as well. But for whatever reason in the second half, it just falls away completely. And what's been interesting is even though in a lot of these games we might be behind by 30, 40, 50 points, we're still not changing our midfield centre bounce attendance mix. Like it's still Taranto, Hopper, Ross, Dow. Like we don't try and put in a Seth Campbell or a Morris Rioli, someone to try and liven things up. And we just end up getting smashed out the middle. And to your point that if we can't control the outside game again, then he's going to get hit lace out. And there's not much that any defenders can do about it. Like we almost need to set up a ring outside of the clearance circle, if that makes sense, to try and contain you guys somehow.
Yeah. So why do you think that the Richmond aren't rotating their midfield?
It's got us absolutely stuffed. There has to be a logical reason, and the reason why it annoys us is you look at someone like Tyler Sonzi, who will play in the VFL in the midfield, and he'll get 35 touches, 12 clearances, be BOG. He'll do that for 3 or 4 weeks, come into the AFL side for a month and play half forward. So Tyler Sonsy's not really ever set foot in the midfield where he's doing his best work in the VFL and what he was drafted as. So it's like, when the game's beyond doubt, why aren't we just changing things up and trying things? It's a little bit frustrating. And yeah, like I did a video on centre bounce stats, and Taranto and Hopper are almost in there 95% of the time. And when it's working in the first half, it's fine. But when it's not working, I just don't know why we don't try something different. But anyway, there has to be a logical reason, I guess.
Yeah, no, and the reason I bring that up was because we went through the same thing a few years ago with Jew. Was it's Rowell, Anderson, Miller, or bust, and that was it. And maybe Swallow was in there from time to time as well. So that's why I was just interested, like why you thought that, because I don't know when it happened to us at the Suns, we were shouting out, for the love of God, give someone else a go. But it was always Rowell, Miller, and Anderson. And what happened is, by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, this might be happening with Richmond. They're stuffed. They've been running around the midfield all day. They've been running to the ground. And then when it was Gold Coast, teams would just run over us in the fourth quarter because Rowell, Anderson, and Miller are absolutely cooked. They can't run again. And then the opposing midfielder, who has like 7, 8 midfielders they're rotating through, are a lot fresher.
100% agree. And that's what I feel like is happening in these second halves, that the guys are just cooked by the time they get in there because they're just getting battered time after time. And it's not sustainable. I mean, no team who wins games does it with 4 or 5 midfielders. It's like 7 or 8. So I'm a little bit lost as to why. But anyway, look, you'll probably see the same thing happen again. It'll be the same guys in there. So keep an eye out for that. The last match up, and I couldn't actually find a photo of Dan Rioli in full flight in his proper Suns kit, but we've got a training photo. I've got Seth Campbell on Dan Rioli, and I reckon this one could eventuate, and I think it would actually be a really exciting matchup, although there could be arguments to put Morris Rioli Jr. on him just to have the Riolis go head-to-head, which I think may happen as well for a bit of... I think both of those boys would get a kick out of that too, by the way.
Yeah, there's a bit of theatre about that for sure. Like you'd like to see it, even if it is just for a few minutes.
I think it'll happen. They'll find a way to manufacture it between themselves. I reckon. Just sort of walk towards each other walk towards each other at a contest, and then hope for the best from there. Yeah, and I think the only way we can really try and impact Dan Rioli is we've got to try and make him accountable the other way. But he does have the defensive element, so it doesn't necessarily work as well as some other halfbacks. But if I'm Richmond, I'm going to try and be getting the ball into whoever his opponent's hand is to try and get them on the scoreboard, just to try and mix things up a little bit and make him feel like he can't dash off as much as he would want to. Because that's going to be, if we let him off the leash, that's going to be super dangerous. Yeah,
and that's probably what I've liked about our team this year as well, especially with like our like halfbacks and our bounce off halfback. Like we've got so much depth there. It's like, if you could put Rioli down, but then you've got Noble, who's been really good for us this year. Joel Jeffrey's come on a lot this year as well. And even Will Powell, who's very unheralded, is also pretty good at sort of bouncing off halfback. So it'll be interesting to see how we go. If Rioli was to be shut down, sort of what levers do we pull? Do we move Rioli sort of around and then maybe allow someone else to run off as well? So it'll be interesting to see sort of the depth if Rioli does get sat on a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Now you've got options. You've got that flex to do that. So, again, we'll probably find players being mixed and matched to try and limit whoever's having the most impact. But, no, I think we've most certainly got our work cut out for us, unfortunately. If you were coaching against the Gold Coast, what things would you be trying to do to pick them apart? What are some of the weaknesses that you reckon you could identify?
One of the weaknesses we definitely have, and it's not so much, I wouldn't say it's a flat out weakness, but if you can, as far as tall forwards go, Ben King is probably being supported by 2 maybe sort of like second year players. Like Walter and Reed will be very good players in the future, but currently at the moment they're sort of young, so they're definitely able to be getting at, whether that's intercepted, whether that's sort of they're easy to sort of run off from. So that would probably definitely be one. The other one, and you may be following Hardwick, obviously, when he was coaching Richmond, one thing we can get through, and this is Adelaide exploited this a little bit, is you can get out the back of us with goals if you've got enough speed. So, for instance, we all, like, our defense is very, like, front half defense. We push up very far.
High pressing, yeah.
High press. And then what happens was, and what was happening against Adelaide a few weeks ago was, if you can get out the back of that, Phil Thorpe was standing in the goal square a couple of times and it was just hitting straight on the chest. He turns around and kicks a goal. So if you could somehow manufacture a way to sort of get beyond that high press and sort of get past that, there's goals to be had, there's scores to be had for sure. That was sort of one thing I definitely noticed watching live as well when I was up on the Gold Coast a few weeks ago. That's definitely a way to get at us.
Yeah, maybe Tom Lynch might have to just get parked in the goal square. I'm not sure his mobility is what it once was. So he might.
No, I was going to say you might have to get him on a bicycle or something so he can sort of stand in the centre circle, turn around, and off he goes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I mean that would be a good way to try and beat it. What I find is that at various stages we'll slow down our ball movement, which kind of limits the chance to beat that or to get over the back quickly. We often go a bit stir crazy with. They'll look at an option, not pull the trigger, and then wait for a few seconds and then go to the same option. It's like if they just pull the trigger earlier, just on instincts, there might be a chance to get some of those run-ons out the back. But yeah, I suppose it's just still a learning thing for a lot of our guys. And
probably, sorry, and sort of the last thing, sort of just it popped into my head while we were speaking is our key defenders, while Collins is great, and losing Ballard to an ACL earlier this year has meant that our depth is a little bit tested there. So last year you would have seen Mac Andrew was flying for everything and sort of intercept marking. This year he has to be more accountable. So if you can make Mac Andrew accountable, you definitely take his, and that's what a few teams have done this year, making him accountable, taking his sort of intercept marking out as well. And it leaves then that's sort of another weapon that sort of gets taken out of our back line a little bit. So if you can make our defenders accountable, like Mac Andrew, who loves that intercept, or even Will Powell is, for instance, that's sort of another way you might be able to sort of eke in a bit of an advantage.
Tell you what, Mac Andrew and Tom Lynch might get stuck into each other as well.
That would be entertaining. he doesn't mind a bit of verbal, old Mac Andrew. Like I imagine the Adelaide Crows have definitely circled that game in later in the year at their joint. So
that was going on after the siren too. Phil Thorpe and him just having a fair chat.
Oh yeah, and that's sort of something I've really sort of enjoyed this year from our team is we got a bit of an edge about us, which we haven't had previously. So having a bit of nasty that Mac Andrew does, or even probably the one that sort of stands out for us is Ben Long, who's got a bit of that edge around him. Also playing very well as well, mind you, but he's sort of him and Mac Andrew, and there are a few others as well that have a bit of sort of a playing on the line, on the edge sort of thing. And sort of gets the lads up a bit more, and they feel a bit bigger 100%. When they walk around. When you've got someone like Ben Long walking next to you, Mac Andrew not so much, not as physically intimidating currently. Give it a few years, it might get there, but at the moment maybe not as physically intimidating. But yeah, having that sort of that bit of that edge is definitely, I think, also helped the team.
It does, and like you said, it lifts the boys. And at the moment, they're at a point where they're able to walk the walk and talk the talk. So why not? Yeah. If you can get another 5% on your opponent, and that's a huge win in football terms anyway. Yeah, for sure. And that's sometimes the difference between a win and a loss is that 5%. And I think as we sort of get later in the year, when it gets winter, it gets cold, and the games probably get a little bit closer and a little bit more contested, that sort of 5% can be all the difference. Yeah, 100%. Yep. All right, well, with that all said and done, what's your final tip, including margin, for this one?
Well, I would tip the Suns, definitely. I think on the podcast earlier in the week, I tipped us by, a 7-8 goals. I'll probably stick with that. I think it will be similar to what happened with you guys and what had happened with us last week as well. I think it'll be close for a half or 2.5 quarters, and then we may put the foot down late. And to move away, only because obviously if you're running the same three midfielders the whole game, we might get a bit of advantage out of that. But yeah, I would say probably 8 goals, 9 goals. I don't think it's going to be the absolute smashing that people are thinking. I think it will be a little bit closer than that. But yeah, I still think we probably win comfortably enough. Yeah, I think the Suns will definitely get up. I'll say 50 or 60 points. Look, even though at Marvel, like we know Dimmer doesn't have a great love for Marvel, and neither do Richmond, so I don't know how that plays into it. But I mean, has he changed his tune? Yeah. Oh, look, I think now living on the Gold Coast, apparently a bit more relaxed. I don't know what's doing up there for him. Maybe it's the weather, But I think for him, it would have been an interesting learning experience, coming from Richmond, now coming to Gold Coast, where if you're a Sun supporter like I am, you know that we played about every different stadium under the sun. Like we play on the Gold Coast, we play in Darwin, we play in Perth, we play in the Barossa, we play in Ballarat, we play everywhere, play in Geelong. So he probably has had to sort of get used to that thought of, I'm not going to play my 14 games or 15 or 16 games a year at the G that I used to. I've got to get used to playing in all these different places and all these different sort of ground shapes and all that sort of stuff. So maybe that's mellowed him out a little bit.
Just catching some extra sun has just made him a happier person.
But no,
it should be an interesting game. Like, I think you'll definitely walk away the happier of the two of us. But like, if we can we're just looking for green shoots. If we can stick it out for a half and see some good signs, it might be as much as we can hope for. But thank you for coming on tonight, Keegan. Much appreciated. All the best for. Is it Saturday night the game is?
Saturday night, yeah. I'll probably roll in down, and it's at Marvel. It's probably 15 minutes on the train from me door to door, so I'll probably roll in and have a bit of a watch just to check it out.
Very nice. Yeah, like I said, it should be a very interesting game. I think the second half might prove to be the difference again if we keep rolling the same midfielders. But we'll see how we go. As long as we have a crack, that's all we can ask for. Yeah,
look, as someone that's been in your position, and you've probably been in your position previously, being a long-time Richmond supporter, all I can really say is, the green shoots are what you live for. You just want to see little wins, and you just want to see some positives out of the kids. And you've got some very talented kids. I saw Smiley's he's back. He's playing a full game of AFL this week, so he's another one you can look forward to getting into the AFL team as well in a few weeks. And then, you want to just follow these young kids and how they progress throughout the year.
That's it. That's what it's all about for us this time of year. So on for the next couple of years, to be honest. But all the best for Saturday night, mate. Enjoy the game if you get along. And thank you again for jumping on tonight. I appreciate it. And if you're a Gold Coast supporter watching, make sure you go and follow Turnover the Tape. You're on all platforms, aren't you?
Yes, Spotify, Apple, all the platforms. If you search us, we'll be there for sure.
And I do want to give a shout out. So I actually found you guys because I asked some of the folk on the Gold Coast Big Footy board who I should be reaching out to for a Gold Coast podcast. And there was quite a few suggestions putting you forward. So thank you to everybody who pointed me your way.
No, I'll have to send them a thanks. They're a good mob there for sure. They do get around me, which is quite nice.
No, that's good to hear. Well, thank you again, mate. And fingers crossed that we can have a pleasantly watched game on Saturday night. And I think you'll come out the happier of the two of us, but all the best.
Definitely hope so. Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.